8 teams remain in the Champions League. We're going to have a look at who's looking good, who you would want to avoid, which teams you definitely would like to draw against, and which players to keep an eye out in the last 8. So, of course, the teams that have made it through: Arsenal, Man City, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico, Bayern Munich, Dortmund and PSG. In terms of who's looking good, let's talk about Man City. 24 goals in 8 games so far, averaging 3 goals per game, averaging 71.3% possession. They've only kept 1 clean sheet, though. Have they not really played anyone yet either?
That is what I was thinking. They drew Copenhagen, which is a dream draw. I think Copenhagen actually played quite well in both legs.
Do you know what I realize? That should have been Man United.
Yeah.
That would have been it. That would have been spicy, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, can they draw each other at that stage?
I don't know, maybe not. Forget it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think obviously they're looking good overall. I think I don't think they've lost in the Champions League in like 2 years now, or pretty much 2 years. Of course, it was the semi-final against Real Madrid way back when. So they're solid in this competition, and I think a lot of people are tipping them, and understandably they're the favourites for the competition right now. But it's going to be interesting to see them take on.
Would you say they are still the favourites, despite them being 3rd in the Premier League, not quite fully on song in the Premier League?
I think a lot of this, we're going to see this. Some things can be a little bit misleading. I think if you want to find cracks in Man City, I think you can, especially with not being able to beat Liverpool, not being able to beat Arsenal in some of those bigger games this year. I think that does play a part in it. But I think, for me, they're still going to be favourites. I think they still generally cook quite nicely when it comes to the Champions League. Bayern Munich, have they turned the corner a little bit?
I'm never sure on Bayern Munich. They had that really bad run. But they've got Harry Kane. I know we're going to talk about players, but I think in the big competitions, in the big moments, I know people go after Kane saying he's not a big game player. But I think at this point in the Champions League, you look at every team and go, who's going to save you? Who's going to save you? And I think Bayern have got a lot of players that can save them at any given moment. I do think tactically, though, they're still not quite right. And at this point in the Champions League, you need to have every little sort of like moment fixed and everything set to go. And they only played Lazio, so there's a bit.
I agree with that. I think beat Mainz 8-1 at home last week, scoring goals. Harry Kane scoring goals. Only lost once at home all season as well. I think it's one where, again, I think the optics are maybe a touch cruel on them. Obviously, like you say, the form hasn't been ideal, but maybe they've turned the corner here. I'd watch out for Bayern Munich. I would watch out. I think in terms of personnel, they've got pretty much everything you'd want in a team. So I think they're still kind of looking all right. You know, I think also I was thinking about this yesterday when I was watching the games. Is like once that quarterfinal is done, once that the last round is done, you can kind of draw a line because there's going to be a good few games between then and the next round, and that can allow you to sort of change your momentum. Talking about match winners, Atletico Madrid, I was really impressed with them in the game yesterday against Inter. I don't think anyone gave them a chance. I think at home they're a different animal. And what I like about them a lot is I think you've got Griezmann being so crucial for them. But match winners in the box. And Depay, I think, was a great example of that. Like, you've got Morata, Griezmann, Correa, and Depay, as I said. You've got players who can go and get you a goal there. They do like to sort of flood the box like that. And 8 different goal scorers in the Champions League as well. So I think we're going to step into who to avoid. I think Atletico is certainly one that you would not want to have because, especially for any of the sort of, let's say, the big boys, they will be expected to sort of deal with Atletico Madrid quite easily, and it's just not going to be that easy.
They just stay alive in every game.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing in Champions League football, and they've had this under Diego Simeone for as long as I can remember. Anytime you play them over 2 legs, or even a singular game, the Inter game was a great example. They were suffering. Inter had them stuck in their own box. And then they've got these like magic players that can just come to life. Riquelme was brilliant off the bench as well. And so I think when you've got that, I would say they're the team to avoid. Because of that like grittiness. I feel like you disagree ever so slightly.
I think I do. I disagree just because I think they're better teams. But I think the ceiling of Atletico Madrid is actually, in a 2-leg affair, as you said, I think is higher than people will give them credit for. A bit like Porto, I think, who obviously went out to Arsenal. In terms of teams to avoid, I think a lot of people, myself included, sort of had this gut call about Arsenal in the Champions League at the start of the season. And I'm happy to change my mind, but I'm kind of stuck with it a little bit. They've only conceded 5 goals in the Champions League so far. Getting past Porto, if you look at the performance, not great, but not really important. It was bigger than that, wasn't it? It was just about getting over the line, and now everything from here on is it has a little bit less pressure and a bit more excitement, I think.
I actually saw your tweet after the game because I basically watched the game and I was like, that was so unimpressive. But they stuck at it. They got their way through. And then I saw your tweet and I was like, psychologically, that is so huge. Because you saw from the celebrations at the end, and they've been criticised for it constantly, but they've not got past that stage for a very long time. And it feels like as you get past these moments in that Arteta Arsenal dressing room, they start to go, all these hurdles we've had as a football club for all these years, we're now just ticking them off as we go along.
Together as well. I think that's the other thing. And it's about getting over the line. You know, but previously, like earlier in the season, it was like, can they beat Man City? They've done that now. You know, can they beat Liverpool? They've done that now. You know, there are still a lot of questions to be asked with Arsenal. But again, I think in terms of their season as a whole, getting past Porto, if they go out there, a bit like the Atletico Madrid thing, as I'm saying, they were expected to get through. So if they were to not get through and not get the goals to score, then I think people start to go, like the same problems, striker, can you score the goals when it's good teams, good defences? But they got over the line, so you can forget about it now and move forwards. And I think actually they would want quite a big tie. I think that would suit them.
I think them playing Atletico Madrid would be a nightmare for them. Because you saw against Porto, when you have to suffer, I think that's when Arsenal are the team to... They don't have that individual quality. Agreed. And it takes us very nicely onto the next team, actually. The only reason these guys are always in this pot of who to avoid, Real Madrid, they've got individual match winners. Courtois and Eder Militao expected back for the quarterfinals. They're always frightening.
Always frightening. Goal scorers everywhere, as you say. Vinicius Jr. can do it himself. Bellingham can go and do it himself. Scoring lots of goals. Very different team to the others. They do like to own the ball, but they also just like those little moments of intricacy to get themselves the goals that they need. And because they're Real Madrid, they have a lot of exciting talent that can do that for them. And to have that bolstered centre-back area, I think is absolutely huge for them to go the whole way. That's where I think at some point they might break if it got to a draw where they're all behemoths now, but like if you get some of these big guys, that's where they could hurt you, because actually they are actually big guys. Like Arsenal actually haven't scored any set piece goals despite scoring, I think it's 18 in the Premier League so far. So them, Man City, a lot of these guys got big teams, and I think that could have hurt Real Madrid because set pieces matter these days. But having those guys back will be very important, and Real Madrid could go very, very far. So what about teams that you'd want to draw?
Barcelona, they're a shadow of the old Barcelona. I mean, they beat Napoli, but Napoli are also absolutely atrocious this season. And whenever it gets to this point in the competition, we've spoken about it so many times already, but you need guys that can win you games. And every time I've watched Barcelona in midfield, it goes to Gundogan, and then he pops it off, and they just lose the ball and disintegrate on a regular basis. So aside from Lewandowski, who's not been that impressive this season, it reminds me of that Suarez last season where he's not very mobile. Put the ball near him, and he'll do something, otherwise he won't. I'm just not that keen on Barcelona. I think if you're City, you're going, give us Barcelona. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think, obviously, in name, they're always pretty frightening. But Ferran, Lewandowski and Felix are the top scorers. They've only got 3 each, which is a lot less than other teams in the competition. And I also think they're not at the Nou Camp. And I went there for El Clasico. It did feel a little bit flat. There isn't that same energy there. So I think that's a problem. The other team, I think Dortmund, PSV were really good. They were really, really good in the game between the two of them. They obviously beat PSV 3-1, but there were huge waves from them. And I just think they always give you a chance. I don't think the overall quality is there. Whenever I see Emre Can, I kind of think, really? Like I think there's a ceiling to them as a team. Direct and interesting at times, and Sancho, you've got a winner there, and Royce, of course, as well. But I think of the teams left, and they're all great teams, I think Dortmund, I'd be surprised if they make it to the semi-finals against anyone, to be honest. Players to watch, then. We've got 3 belters here. We spoke about Harry Kane, so we won't speak about him for too much longer. Most goal involvements in the tournament, with a word he's actually learnt this year, 9. And directly contributed to 60% of Bayern's goals. The other 2, we touched on Antoine Griezmann. We both absolutely love him and the freedom that he has. He's still getting over the joke. Yeah. Joint top scorer with 6 goals in the competition for Atletico, as we've spoken about, who aren't the favourites to go and win it. But there's one player who will be the guy that a lot of people are talking about, surely.
Kylian Mbappe, Mr. PSG. He may be leaving at the end of the season.
For now.
Yeah, I mean, Luis Enrique has been subbing him off, saying he's going to leave at some point. Yeah. But if there is a way for him to go it is this way. They've been wanting to win the Champions League. That's why they've built a super team for him, around him. It's never worked. It's still actually clinically wrong. It's still not working. But when you've got Mbappe, he showed against Real Sociedad, tight game, and then he goes, here's 2 moments. Let's get out of this. It's a bit too easy for me. I think if they can avoid City, Arsenal, Madrid, I think they can take the other teams down. And when it gets to that stage, that's when Mbappe is your guy, because he can just unlock defences on his own.
Played a bit of a diamond there. You've got Hakimi who will bomb on. And actually, it's not very like Luis Enrique, but that team will at times kind of allow the opposition to have the ball a little bit, to allow Mbappe to utilise the space and the pace that he's got as well. So not your usual PSG side, but one with probably a bit less pressure, aside from the pressure, of course, on Mbappe. So definitely one to watch for someone who I think wants to go out with a bang, if he can do. Guys, let us know. Who would you want? Who do you want to avoid? And which players should you watch out for?